So we are continuing our theme of ethics that we started last time. And last time I focused mainly on the personal ethics. Today we are looking at relationships. And next time we will look on leadership. So there are just 3 parts to this whole ethic presentation, right? So let's get started. So we have 3 broad agenda that we are actually discussing. We start with handling conflicts in relationships. That's the first topic for discussion. And the second would be interdependence in a sacred relationship. And the third is Chanakya's quotes on relationships. So we just have 3 parts. So actually, the first and second are the main parts of today's discussion. Okay, so there was already something on relationship that I had already discussed when we discussed the 3 modes. So we are just putting that up once again. These 4 levels of relationship, 4 kinds of relationship. If you remember, the first one was, in tamas, in the mode of ignorance. The second one was the mode of passion, rajas. The third one was the mode of goodness, and the fourth one was the ideal kind of relationship. So we had discussed this already, right? Yeah. So now handling conflicts in relationship. We begin with the main topic for the day. So I am putting up 6 points under this heading, and each of this we would discuss pretty much the similar way, the way we did it last time. So we start with talking about something on freedom and disciplined freedom. So this is especially in a relationship between parents and children, between elders and kind of youngsters. So that kind of a relationship, the importance of that. I'll start with that. I go on to interdependence in community. I will speak on synergistic partnership and being a team player. Then we will speak something on heart of communication. How much is unity to be stressed over principles? And finally, a brief look at hidden agenda in relationships and what it does to it. So these are some of the subtopics that we are dealing with in the first part of our presentation. Okay, great. So we start with the first thing. Okay, here's a picture for all of you to ponder on. So I want everyone, including that guy who just slept off, please wake him up. Yeah, good morning. Good afternoon, rather. Please look at this picture and try to tell me what you understand from this. So there is a picture over there. Don't look at these small writings in it, like here it is written Spain, Italy, etc. Leave that. That's not very important. First of all, I want someone to tell me what do you see in the picture. So that should be very easy. And then someone else could tell me what is the meaning of that in terms of biology. Anyone? What do you see?
So I can't see what's written, but the...
Forget, I told you, what's written is not important. So can you just tell me what are you seeing here?
There's 3 frogs in the hot water, yeah. And
yeah, so all of you see this? There are frogs in a boiling pan. Okay, great. Does anybody know anything about frogs, skin and boiling water and the interconnection between them? I mean, I'm just testing your biology and general knowledge skills. Anyone knows? Anyone knows, for example, how they cook frogs and why they do that? No one? Okay. Okay, here it is. Frogs have a very peculiar characteristic. Their characteristic is that they can sense large changes in temperature, but small changes in temperature, they keep adjusting to it, so they never sense it. So basically, when people boil frogs for their dinner or whatever they do, so if you boil water and then put a frog inside, it will immediately jump out. Because it understands that this temperature is not suitable for my skin. It immediately jumps out. But if you put frogs in room temperature water and then start the fire, lo and behold, with time, the frogs boil to death. Because what happens is, the frogs keep adjusting themselves to the change in temperature, and without their own understanding, they boil to death. Okay, so this is how actually people boil frogs, based on this understanding that frogs can detect abrupt changes in temperature, but not, minor changes in temperature, which they keep getting adjusted to, and they boil to death. Okay, great. So now why have I put this over here? So this basically comes from one article in some London Times that we picked up a year ago. The heading of that article was "The Post-Modern Frog of Britain Boils to Death." So the entire article, so it is in a cultural context. So that means if you see, culturally in society, there are several small changes that keep happening. You agree with me, right? Small changes that keep happening with time, culturally. In terms of ethics and values that society accepts or does not accept. Okay, just like, for example, just to give a practical example, in most European countries today, gay marriages are fine, right? However, if somebody 200 years ago, you ask him about his opinion or her opinion about this, he would be shocked. He would say that, I didn't expect that people would pass such kind of laws. So, you understood? It's a simple example just to say that over a long period of time, there are large shifts in values, ethics and understanding in society. Everybody agrees with this? Yeah. Now what happens is that certain values, so this article in this British newspaper came in the context of this. So there are several internets, I think I mentioned this last time, but I'm just mentioning it again because it is in this context that we're talking. Just like in the European world, because of the liberal approach that they have generally taken in terms of how they want to deal with their people, their youngsters, etc. Most of you would be knowing that you cannot actually, in the European world, in the American world, in many countries, you cannot punish your children. That means in some places, you cannot even scold them a little too much. They have rights to call the police and, right? So sometimes where some Indian parent typically would have done something to his child because, he comes from a different background over here, and the child just calls the police and there is a lot of trouble, and, the police come and take the child away and put the parents in jail, and they struggle a lot to come out and come back to India finally, right? You must have come across such articles. Okay, so 2 years back, this was one debate in the British society, that there were several internet providers, and all these internet providers by default do not provide any filters. You understand? So there are no, there's nothing, because in a liberal world nothing is banned, right? If you remember last time we spoke about it. In the more you are liberal, everything is okay. But the more conservative, too many things are banned. Okay. So in the European world, obviously, it is not that certain internet sites are banned or anything. Everything is open. So they had this debate whether to ask the internet service providers to have at least the adult sites by default switched off, especially considering that there are several children also who have access to internet, 9-year-old, 10-year-old boys and girls. And then if somebody wants to enable it, he has to request it. And if he requests, it would get done, no issues. Because that's a liberal idea, that you don't block somebody in doing something that he or she wants to do. But even this, by and large, was not accepted. Because they felt that blocking it by default, even with the purpose of trying to protect children, from unnecessarily browsing through sites which are not age appropriate for them, is an infringement on some rights in general. So the British society in general decided that no. So there were several people in Britain also who were alarmed by that decision, who felt that, why are we doing this? Can't we at least be this much conservative? So in that context, they wrote the article that the post-modern frog of Britain boils to death, where because of such degree of liberalization, perhaps we are boiling to death as a culture, as a civilization, but we are not understanding that. Because over a period, every year, we kept making changes and our skin has got used to everything now. So we are okay with everything. So this is where I want to start with this particular topic on discipline freedom. Okay, so the whole thing is the importance of discipline. Okay, and because see, discipline and freedom, all of you would agree that in some way they seem contrary, right? Because freedom means choose to do whatever I want to do. discipline means there are many restrictions around me. Okay, so we are really, particular phrase called discipline freedom, where there is freedom, but at the same time, a person is disciplined as well. Okay. So this is another article that I picked up. It was a social experiment on a grand scale conducted by CNN, and where a growing number of adults fear that it isn't working out so well. So anyway, according to one poll commissioned by The Times and CNN, this is in America, 2/3 of American parents think that their children are spoiled. So they did this comprehensive survey a couple of years back. But 2/3 of the parents think that no, our children are totally spoiled now. Okay, so this is all connected to this frog only boiling to death. And the question of how liberal you are with your kids. On one hand, you say that you don't scold them, you don't chastise them, you just allow them to do whatever they want, make their decisions. But the question is, at that age, do they even have the emotional or the required maturity to make a right decision? When you are not even an adult, you have not crossed those stages in your physical development. Okay, so it's a very interesting article called Spoiled Rotten. Okay, so this was done by The Times and the CNN. So this is all connected to this point. So anyway, coming back to the Mahabharata, this discussion is repeatedly there. Okay, in this context, the father is Dhritarashtra and his sons. And we see that this person, Dhritarashtra, this king, right from the childhood, he is constantly pampering his sons. As in, his sons are doing so many things which are actually not correct, right from childhood. See, because please remember, nobody becomes a criminal suddenly. Everybody evolves. There is an evolution even of a criminal. There is a society, there is a family through which he comes up as a criminal finally. It's not that suddenly he becomes a criminal. No, nothing happens sudden in this world. So if you again trace it back to their childhood, Duryodhana and his brothers, they were doing all kinds of mischief. Like even when they were very small, Duryodhana poisons the food of Bhima in an attempt to kill him. And Dhritarashtra is aware of all this. He knows my son has done this. But there is not even a mild chastisement. There is no correction offered at all. It's like blind attachment. Because I'm attached to my son, I love him so much, I just allow him, because I have a very good relation with my son, he's my son after all, so I allow him to do whatever he wishes to do. And then finally there is a consequence that all of them pay at the end. Okay, so I just took this particular theme, this British article, the CNN, as well as the Mahabharata, to convey this point of the importance of discipline in anyone's life in growing up. So of course this is not relevant to most of you because you're already kind of grown up adults, but we are really talking about children and that relationship over there. I'm beginning my talk with that. Any comment over here on this particular point? Has everyone understood really what we are talking? Yeah? I think I mentioned this story some time ago, but I'll anyway mention it once again because it's relevant over here. That I was aware of this lady who was a 60-year-old Indian grandmother who had gone to the US, and the 11-year-old granddaughter did some small mischief at home, and she mildly chastised and corrected that girl. That girl called 911, called the police, and they put this granny in jail. And then the parents came back from office and they saw that their mother is not there now. She's in the jail. So they had to work a lot to get her out. And the first thing after coming back, she said that I want a ticket back to India, because I'll be happy over there. So sometimes it does happen that because of different cultural settings and, different kinds of rules, people have a different idea of what discipline and freedom means. Yeah, makes sense? Okay, good. Let's go ahead. The second point I wish to take in relationships is interdependence. And this is something which we are going to speak a lot towards the end as well, but I wish to begin with that. So interdependence in the context of a community. So that means in a community, if we have to have a successful community in general in society, there is a feeling of interdependence and connectivity with everyone. Okay, so just like this Indian concept of Varnashram, we are going back to that once again. This was based on this idea only of interdependence. The idea of this Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, now I am just presenting it in a little different way, where I am presenting the, the area where they primarily work and their actual contribution to society. So for example, the Shudra, his primary work is in the area of, that means he works primarily with the body and mind. Primarily with the body. And obviously some part of the mind is also involved. That means his main contribution is energy. Okay. Whereas a Vaishya means his main contribution is wealth. Which is, again, if you see wealth, we have put it in the category of mind, because it is not just enough to, work hard with your body to earn money. You have to really be smart to earn money. So he is working at the level of the mind. Kshatriya, whose main goal is, whose main contribution is in the area of power, he works in this area of mind and intellect. And the Brahman, whose main contribution is in the development of knowledge, is working in the area of the intellect and the soul. So this is the idea actually. So the Varnashram concept was primarily based on where you will contribute in society. Where is your contribution? You understood? So of course later people got an understanding that it is by birth, where no matter I'm born in any particular family, it really doesn't matter what I'm doing. So that is the current understanding by and large, but that's not the understanding of the Indian philosophy and ethics itself. No, the understanding is that, and so what you understand from this is interdependence between all these people. So for example, it's not that the fellow who generates knowledge, he does not have power, he does not have wealth. The fellow who develops wealth, he does not have power. The fellow who has power, he does not have wealth. So if you see, everyone has an area where they contribute primarily, and they contribute in that area, and there is interdependence. So there is a respect for everyone's contribution. So when society works that way, then it is very successful. And if you actually observe from this point onwards, if you really see, there is a lot of sacrifice involved as well. Just like for example, if you see Vaishya, a Vaishya is not just someone who is earning wealth, but he is also doing all the agriculture. Okay? Or a Kshatriya is not just one who has power, he is actually fighting. Now if you see, there are so many people who go on strikes. Like if you see modern India, there are so many strikes that are always there. But you will never hear that the farmers decided to go on a strike. They said that, we are not going to sow the crop in the next season because we are not happy with what, they cannot afford to. They will never do that. Neither will the army man say that now we are not going to fight only with Pakistan until we get some more money. They may have their grievance, but at least they never go. The point is, these people sometimes they work in areas which involve primarily a sacrifice. Just like in India today, if you see, the occupation of a farmer is something which, even though the government is trying to encourage in general with various schemes, etc., but still most people want to come out of it. Because it's not seen as a very niche area. An area of, though of course everyone at the end of the day has to fill his or her belly by eating, but still it is not seen as an area which is kind of too modern or too polished, because of which people want to come out of it. That's why even army, India, because it has a big population right now, perhaps we don't have an issue. But if you see countries like Singapore, there it is actually compulsory for everyone from the age of something 17 to 19, some 2 years, they have to give to the army, 18 to 20 actually. 18 to 20, every male has to be part of the army. So they had to make it that way because nobody is ready to come. Of course, they have a, so that is sometimes a little artificial because everybody is not meant to serve in the army. Imagine if the government made such a rule here. They will not, because we have a larger population. But in countries where the population is small, governments have started doing such schemes. And they have their own set of social challenges. Like I was reading on this Singapore that one social challenge they started facing is, because for the girls, there is no army service. So it has so happened that the girls get more education than the boys in Singapore. Because 18 to 20 is a very critical time in your career. So all the boys go to the army. So they miss out school, college, everything. And by the time they come back, obviously the girls have a lead because they're studying. They've gone ahead in their careers. So they have a different, social challenge as a result of that particular situation. But the point really here is that even the task of a school teacher, for example, is nowadays only those people take, who never got any other job or who are not fit for anything else. By and large, very few people with real passion in that field come into the field of knowledge because it just doesn't seem so lucrative. You get this point? So it has always been like that. So the idea is it's not just about the position, but it is about the sacrifice involved. And that sacrifice is what really makes these people what they are. Okay, so just to share one more story from the army, I came across a story some time ago that this was again during the Kargil wars. It was an old story, but still. So there was this officer who had a battalion and they were fighting at the border. So there was one soldier, Jawan, who was shot. And he was shot, when he was shot, the officer of that battalion, he went immediately, he held this man, Jawan, and started pulling him, trying to rescue. So the Jawan said, "Sir, aap yahan kya kar rahe ho? Because if you have come here, you are exposed to the enemy. They will shoot again. I am already anyway shot. It's better I just stay here and die. Don't try to save me, you will die." So the Jawan told him. The officer said, "See, it's not like that." He said, "I'm unmarried. Even if I die, it doesn't make any difference to anyone. Of course, my parents will be sad, but that's okay. But as far as you're concerned, you have a wife and you have 2 kids. So your life is more important in that context." So he actually embraces this Jawan and he brings him and then he's shot. And the officer dies, but the Jawan escapes. And then he reports that this fellow did this to me. And of course, he was rewarded Paramveer Chakra and all that at the end of the day. But still, it is that kind of sacrifices that make the caste what it is. But in India today, unfortunately, it has so happened that people are not interested in that. In fact, in recent times, there is again a very amusing situation where even all the top so-called higher castes of India, they fight for reservations and several things, which is not what they're supposed to do. For example, if you see in Maharashtra, Shivaji and the Marathas which are there, they are actually a Kshatriya caste. You understood? They are the fighters who fought against the Mughals, who basically stood for that sacrifice via power. But nowadays that is forgotten. That's forgotten because that mood is not there now. But rather the mood is in terms of how we can get more for our enjoyment. So when the society becomes like that and that is the standard of relationships, there is problem. And that's the culture, that is the social problems that we encounter in our country, right? Where everybody feels that, they don't want to contribute, but they just want the fun and they want the reservations. Everybody wants that. So then it becomes a very interesting situation, how society actually develops and goes ahead, which is what we have to see with time. Yeah. Anyway, so there's another quote from Chanakya. He talks about what is the strength of a particular caste. He says that realized knowledge is the Brahman strength. That means if he has actually realized the knowledge that he stands for. The Kshatriya strength is the army, the power. Army is just, as in the power is the strength actually, whether he has power. Stored wealth, that means wealth is the power of the Vaishya and service is the power of the Shudra. So basically, each caste has their strength basically in terms of where they operate. And when a person operates like that, then that makes sense in a society. So that's something to start with. Okay, let's go ahead. I'll take questions a little later. I'll just cover the 6 points and then take questions, if any. So now we discuss certain more important aspects in developing relationships. So in relationship, one thing is always there, that when you have a relationship with someone, you are looking for what we call as a partnership, right? And partnership means, the adjective here we are using a synergistic partnership. You understand synergy, right? Synergy as in when 2 competent people come together, it is important that there is synergy between them, where that means their energy gets multiplied and not that their energy conflicts with each other. So that means when you are making a partnership with anybody to do any task, it is not just important to see whether the other person is competent, but it is also important to see whether you can synergize with that person. And if you synergize with that person, then only that partnership creates a meaning. Otherwise, even if two competent people come together, but they are unable to synergize their strengths and their competencies, nothing happens. So again, going back to the Mahabharata, this is a very interesting theme where, as we know, Krishna becomes the driver of Arjuna. Okay, so now what happens is Karna, when Karna wants to fight with Arjun, he tells Duryodhan that, see, I need a driver as competent as Krishna, because that fellow has a very good driver. And if I have my ordinary driver who cannot really maneuver the chariot in the right place at the right time, I will not be able to fight him effectively. So Duryodhan thinks, come on, how do I arrange for such a driver? So then in his army, in Duryodhan's army, there is this one king whose name is Shalva. So he approaches Shalva and he tells him, hey Shalva, just do me one favor. Instead of fighting, which you are good at, become the driver of my friend Karna. So Shalva says that, hey, come on, you're insulting me. You know, I'm a fighter. How can you make me driver? So Duryodhan has to do a lot of coaching to tell him that, see, please, at least for my sake, do it. You know, because unless you become the driver, he will not have a very good driver. And if he doesn't have a very good driver, he will lose. If he loses, our army loses. At least for the sake of the army, please. So Shalva agrees. But then he puts various conditions to Karna. He tells Karna, see, I will only drive. If the chariot wheel gets stuck in the mud, I will not get down. It's like a driver saying that I will drive the car, puncture hua to main kuch nahi karunga. The owner only has to get down and repair the puncture. Something like that in modern equivalence. So Shalva says that I will become the driver, I will not remove the wheel from the mud. And also I will keep saying anything I want, because I'm not a servant, like, you know, I'm a king. So my views will cross your view. I will have my own opinion at any point of time and I'll keep saying it. So basically what happens is when this Karna and Shalva come together, it's such an interesting combination that both of them are competent. Competency is not the issue, but they're just unable to synergize their energies. And because of that, there is constant disaster. Okay, so they are unable to even communicate effectively to each other. And we all know that eventually when Karna is fighting with Arjun and his chariot gets stuck, Shalva says, I had told you before only, I will not lift that. That work is not befitting my status. You only get down and do it. And that is the point where he dies as well, Karna. So the point really here, on the other hand, when Krishna is driving Arjuna's chariot, there was no such preconditions. He takes the role of a driver, behaves as a driver, does everything what a driver is supposed to do. And because he does that very effectively, there is synergy between them. So the point here is that when you make a relationship with someone, it's not just important to see whether the competencies match. Perhaps the first thing that you are supposed to see is, can you synergize with that person? Because without synergy, competency makes no sense. In fact, the competency, so here we had an example of two people who were very competent, but they couldn't synergize. And because they could not do that, they actually lost the whole game. Okay, so just like, I mean, going to the example of football, football is a very interesting game where, you know, one coach very famously, he said that in football, a pass is considered faster than a dribble. Like all of you know a dribble, right? Like you've seen Maradona dribbling through the opponent to hit the goal, right? So, but a pass is considered faster than a dribble, because when you pass the ball, the other person gets it and, you know, it goes quicker rather than you yourself trying to dribble. That means the goal in football is not about whether you hit the goal, but it is whether your team creates a goal. Okay, so several times the excellent players would pass more quickly and more smartly. So it's not so much like cricket, if you see in some way, at least, you know, at least the batting part of it, it's mainly a, what shall I say, individual game in some way, though there is some teamwork, but still. So that's why in our country we have so many people who have excellent individual records, but in terms of really, you know, getting a lot of success in international level, it is generally less. You know, we tend to win in India. You go to Australia or somewhere, then, you know, you don't win much. So you understand the point here, right? So a pass is considered faster here. So the point is of a team player. So from here again you get this idea of how important it is to play as a team. And the Mahabharata again showcases that very well. Among the 5 brothers, if you see, Bhima and Arjuna, they were competent in several ways more than Yudhishthir. In terms of skill, power, in terms of, vanquishing the enemies and all that stuff, they were actually far ahead of their elder brother. But still there was never any envy thinking that, we killed more people in the war, so we should become the king. Why should the elder brother become just because he's elder? No, they saw themselves as a team. And they never saw that, okay, if I am doing something, why should, my elder brother take the credit? The whole idea was we are playing as a team. And because we are playing as a team, the team gets benefit. So that's fine. Now the captain of the team only lifts the trophy. That's okay. But that doesn't mean that I should not hit the goal. So that's the idea here. So synergy and team player, right? Now we go on to the next part. Now here I want to ask a question actually. The heart of communication. That means I wish to ask all of you, in communicating effectively, what do you think is more important? Proficiency and competence in language, or the ability to get the desired effect? Though perhaps you may actually not know the language very well. You understood my point? That means I want to ask you, in communication, in effective communication, what is the heart of communication? How much do you think language proficiency plays a role in effective communication? This is my simple question. Anyone with a raise of hand? How much do you think language plays a role in effective communication? Like many times we study, like I think you also may study in your, I don't know whether you have this semester, communication skills. You have this semester? Okay. But in separate, are you primarily studying language over there? Or you're studying something else? You're studying language as well. Okay, can anybody tell me how important do you think is proficiency in language in communicating in your relationships? Anyone with a raise of hand? No idea or what? Someone? Yeah, just pass her the mic. Yeah.
So I think languages hold a lot of importance, because though our actions might get the desired effect, but it certainly hampers the kind of effect that we have on the people's minds. As in, we might be able to get the result, but their hatred towards us also affects the kind of work that they do. As in, doing something out of fear or doing something out of wanting to do it is where language comes in.
Okay, good. Yeah, certainly, obviously, language has an important role in communication. I'm not here to say it's not. Okay, good. Anybody else with any other opinion here? Anyone else? Yeah, pass up.
Actually, in communication, conveying your message effectively is more important than the language that you try to use. So. Okay.
So you would put language at second,
yes,
rather than the ability to really strike the effect.
Convey your message.
Good. Yeah, so certainly language is important. There's no question that it is not, because just like, for example, if I'm standing here and if I don't know the language that you know, and I try to communicate with all kinds of signals and symbols, maybe I may be able to get some effect, but still there is difficulty. So language is important, not that it is not. But here I am trying to show some cases. Now, anybody knows which is this photograph, this painting actually? What am I showing over here? Anybody knows? This is from history, it's not from Mahabharata, so I think you should be aware in general. What am I trying to show here? What is this painting about? Whose painting is this? This is of someone in India in the last 500 years, so I think that should be more easier for you to guess. Yeah, someone said that. Who said that? Yeah, Maharana Pratap, correct. This is Rana Pratap along with his horse, Chetak. Okay. So, this Rana Pratap had this horse whose name was Chetak. Now the interesting thing is this horse, Chetak, obviously did not speak the language Rana Pratap spoke. But it is said that they were an excellent team. Because they were able to really communicate with each other. And on several occasions, how many of you have read or heard about Rana Pratap and his horse? Okay, at least some knowledge is there, good. So, there were occasions, it is said, where Rana Pratap was injured and Chetak would actually take the king on his back, even if Chetak's leg was damaged or something up a hill. And Rana Pratap, it is said, was very heavy, because today you have his, all his armor and everything is present today, and they weigh approximately 250 kilos. So we have no real idea how much Rana Pratap weighed, you know, and the horse, they just like, I mean, these people actually, who actually fought with their bare hands, they were actually in many ways very strong. Like Shivaji, if you see, his sword is over 75-80 kilos, it's present today. So with one hand, he had that sword with him, and he was fighting. Now, just imagine holding 75 kilograms in your hand. It's a weight of an adult, actually, to hold that in one hand and fight. So these people were strong in several ways. See, nowadays what has happened is wars are fought by technology. You understood? Just like the Iraq war, if you see, Obama or Bush or whoever fought that, they just sent submarines that came close, and actually all the shooting was done from the sea itself. They just destroyed Iraq, and then the army goes only to do what they call as mop-up operations, just to clean up everything, you know, and to do some final killing. But most of the war is won just by pressing buttons. So the raw strength has not become the requirement in today's world, in warfare. But those days it was not like that. So per se, you had to be really strong as well. So the point really is that these two, though they never spoke the same language, but they were able to communicate with each other. And in fact, there is a memorial, there is a tomb for the horse. Somewhere in Udaipur, if you go there and see, there is a memorial for this particular horse. Because the horse is also honored for the contribution in fighting the Mughals. Right? Interesting. So a similar story comes in the Mahabharata as well. Again, going back to the same example, where Karna and Shalva are on one side and Arjuna and Krishna are on the other. Now what happens is, Karna has one very special weapon, but he has only one sample of it, as many times it is. You know, you just have one copy of some very important, some powerful missile. So he decides to shoot it. So Karna takes aim and decides to shoot at Arjun's head. Shalva tells him, Karna, don't shoot at his head, shoot at Arjun's chest. So by this time they already had a lot of argument. So Karna had decided, I will never listen to this person. So Karna says, why should I listen to you? I will shoot at the head. I have decided that. I am not going to shoot at his chest. And I am confident that I will hit his head. Shalva says, don't do it. I am telling you, you see the consequence. You will not achieve your goal. But he shoots nevertheless. Now on the other side, Krishna, what he does is, when he sees that this particular weapon is coming, he immediately conveys to all his 4 horses, which immediately sit down. So there is some signal to be given where the horses just sit. And because they sit, the entire chariot comes down, and that special missile that Karna had, it just shoots and it hits Arjun's crown and it goes off. And nothing happens to him really. So Shalva tells him, see, I told you, shoot at the chest, don't shoot at the head. You lost it now. This is one copy of a very important missile that you had, but you wasted it. So this is an example of communication going wrong. So the point is, the language was known. The problem was not language. The problem was because they were not synergizing with each other, even though the words were spoken, the other party never understood it. On the other hand, even a horse understands. An animal also understands several times, you know, without knowing the language. An animal understands what you are trying to tell, like, right? So the same thing in the Ramayana also we see, when this Jatayu is fighting with Ravan, it's a bird. But still it knows that something is going wrong over here. And even though Jatayu is almost on the verge of death, it holds its life until it is at least able to tell Ram that this is the place where, you know, your wife has been taken or whatever. It just communicates in its own fashion as a bird. So the point really is that the most important thing in its communication is that connection and that relationship. When that is there, you are able to get the desire. Without which, even if you are very good at the language, you develop problems in relationships. So this, for example, is one chart I took, which speaks about, the number of divorces per 100 marriages in the world currently. So if you see this chart, I know that these figures are not visible to all of you, but the darker the color gets, the numbers approach like 50, 60, etc. out of 100. You understood? Now if you see the first world, the first world means, you understand, right? The first world means Europe, North America, Australia, etc. The first world, where at least whatever my understanding is, they have 100% literacy, right? So there is no problem in language. It's not that people don't know language. Everyone knows language, right? But still, you are unable to gel along with the person because it's not just about language. Language is a tool. So that's how we see it. Language is an important tool, but it is a tool. The most important thing is, are you able to heart strike a relationship where you can allow the other person to understand what you wish to say and have that person understood as well. If a person is able to do that, then there is a relationship, there is communication. Otherwise, language alone doesn't do any good. That's what we're seeing here. Okay, great. Moving on to the next point. So till now we have obviously spoken about relationship in terms of unity. But then again, someone may ask, is it that unity is to be stressed at all costs? Okay, so I'm putting a question over here. Sorry. Is unity stressed over principles? That means, in a relationship, how much importance we give to unity, to be united, vis-a-vis how much importance we give to the right principles. That means, if certain principles are broken, then there is no point in unity. So what is the thought here? Anybody? Please participate a little bit, somebody. Yeah, okay, pass the mic to her. She has something to say.
I guess principles are more to be used, preferred, because in a relationship, if principles aren't there, how will you be with that person? So that's why principles are needed to be there.
Yeah, very good. So principles are actually to be stressed, because simply being united without focusing on the real principle behind the unity doesn't seem to make much sense. Right? So again, going back to the Indian epics, there are these two stories that I wish to take. One is in the Ramayana, where when Vibhishan, the brother of Ravan, when he tells him that what you're doing is wrong, because for your personal sake, you're putting the entire country at risk. So Ravan and Indrajit, they say, come on, you are supposed to be our party. How can we speak from the other person's perspective? Okay, so they basically throw him out. And then he comes to the other side, to Ram's side, to join his side. So the people in Ram's side also, they say that, how can we take this fellow? He has already ditched his own brother. So perhaps he would do here the same. But then Ram overrules them and he takes him in. But the point that we get to see over here is the unity which is there. So Vibhishan is united with his brother. In fact, at the end of the day, Vibhishan only does all the last rites for his brothers and everyone, because he's the only guy alive in that family. Everyone, all the other male members are dead. So there is this feeling of fondness for your so-called people, with whom you have a relationship. But at the same time, on principles, there cannot be a compromise. So Vibhishan is a classic example who, when he understands that the principles are not being followed, he apparently quits that place and he comes on the other side. From an external perspective, this is treachery. But still, in his heart, he still has love for his family, because they are his family at the end of the day. And he cries a lot when he sees his brothers dead. And he is lamenting, thinking that, my dear brothers, why didn't you listen to me? Why did you have to unnecessarily fight this war? So there is unity, because you know what is the danger of saying that principles are only more important? Because then what happens in a relationship? A person could become a little too unforgiving, saying that now this principle has been violated. Now I cannot be with you. That again makes no sense, because mistakes are going to be done by everyone. Correct? But the point really here is, are you ready to forgive also the other person? Are you ready to understand? Correct? So it's not that Vibhishan quits on day one itself. He lives with Ravan for an entire life. tolerating whatever his brother had been doing. But at one point when it gets a little too much, and in fact, he also doesn't quit. He is in fact thrown out. But then he takes it in the right spirit. He says that, okay, fine. If we couldn't stay together, that's okay. Similarly, in the Mahabharata also you see, Kauravas, Duryodhana and his brothers, it is seen that they never had any argument in their life. That means Duryodhana, Dushasan and the brothers basically, they never had any argument. They were completely united. But on the other hand, on the Pandava side, though they were only 5, they had a lot of arguments among themselves over certain things to be done in certain ways. They had a lot of debates. Okay. So you will see that this group is extremely united, the Kauravas, but that unity serves no purpose because it was all on a false foundation. Okay. So just like, I have just taken some simple examples from Indian politics where, in our some governments we have seen sometimes like there is a coalition government where there are all kinds of scams happening, but because they feel that we are all united, no one exposes the other person, and at the end what happens, everyone loses the election. You understood? So they tend to be united, and but their unity in the end basically it just fails everybody because their unity is not on any principle. It is just for the sake of personal enjoyment. So that unity is again meaningless. Just like I'm just taking an example from biology. Crows are said to be very united. Crows have this very interesting property or characteristic that a crow will never eat food alone. If you just see a crow, when it finds some food, it immediately calls for all the other crows. They never eat alone food. They call others also. They call all the other crows. Hey, come on, there's a feast over here. Come. They call everyone. A tiger, on the other hand, is extremely, that means it's a recluse. Like it is said that one forest of 100 square kilometers, one male tiger only can exist in that. He doesn't allow another female tigers are welcome, but male tigers are not allowed in that territory. No, that is the tiger ethics. No, I'm not. So, the tiger. So, but that doesn't make the tiger anyway less than the crow. As in, we still value tigers, even though they stay by themselves and they're not a pair. So the thing, unity is stressed, but at the same time, when principles go drastically wrong, one has to see whether one is ready to sacrifice that. Okay, and in fact, that's what again in the Mahabharata is what Krishna speaks to Karna repeatedly, because Karna time and again is told by Krishna that why are you fighting on the side of Duryodhana? Come to the right side. But he says that no, we are friends. Because I'm his friend, I'm supposed to help him. Okay, so the whole point is friendship cannot be blind like that you will do anything just for your unity. Principles are at some point important in friendship. And if you stress unity at that point a little too much over principles, there is calamity waiting for you. Right? The last point is, at least in the first part of relationships, is hidden agenda in relationships. Right? So several times we see that people form relationships with a lot of hidden agenda. That means they have their own agenda why they have made a relationship. And we wish to say here that whenever there is an agenda in relationship, a very strong, of course, in this world everybody will have some agenda for certain, but when it crosses certain limits in terms of you don't have actually much, that means you're trying to lay all the terms as per your own needs, then basically that relationship doesn't work in the long term. Okay, so some quick examples here. We start with some Indian politics. So this is stuff that we get to see in India, where there are some politicians who, who are enemies with each other for decades. Right? For decades they are actually blasting each other. But then at some point they decide to come together because they have a lot of hidden agenda over there. And because that hidden agenda, so that relationship starts on a very rocky boat, because both the parties are only thinking about what they are going to get. And it doesn't, history has proven that such relationships don't last too long and they have to crumble down because there is no there's no element of sacrifice in that. Okay, similarly we see Duryodhana and Karna. Duryodhana actually uses Karna a lot. It's not that he really values Karna. He uses Karna as a scapegoat against Arjun because he understands that somebody has to fight him. So I need this man. And he pampers him and he develops a friendship with him. Okay, so that's again an example. And similarly, even people in the Kaurava army as well, the people who fought on the Kaurava side, several of them had their own hidden agenda. Okay, so just like Drona. So Drona was a teacher, but still he fights on the side of Kauravas. And the reason why he fights is because his son Ashwathama is a good friend of Duryodhana. So because his son is on that side, he fights on that side. That's why when Drona dies, so the way they kill Drona is, Krishna tells Yudhishthira that this fellow can be killed only in one way. You need to tell him that Ashwathama is dead. So Yudhishthira again is asking the question of ethics. How can I lie? He says, well, if you want to lie, then you sit here watching the fun. Okay. Again he reminds what Drona has done. So then when Yudhishthira says that Ashwathama is dead, interestingly, what does Drona do? He stops fighting. Because he was there only for his son. On the other hand, we see Arjuna and others, all their sons were dead in the war, but they continued fight. Because they were fighting not just for the sake of their sons, but they were fighting for the sake of the kingdom. So it was a different, that means your agenda comes into play. So when the agenda is lost, then your motivation is lost. And that's exactly what happened with Drona. When he heard that the Ashwathama is dead, he said, now I've lost all interest in fighting. I don't want to fight. Then he is killed at that point of time. So hidden agenda in relationships, they really don't work in the very long term. Okay, so with that, we just end the first part where we spoke about these 6 points: discipline and freedom, interdependence, synergistic partnership, communication, unity over principle, and hidden agenda in relationships. Any question or comment here before I take to the next part? Yeah, so can you just pass the mic? Wherever it is.
So can you please give an example of day-to-day life where we use unity to be more stressed over, no, unity to be stressed over principle, yeah.
Oh, where we stress unity over principles. Sometimes, for example, in a nationalistic scenario, as a nation, we all believe that, we have fondness for our country and we feel that, yes, everything good should happen with India. So there is a feeling of unity. So, I just want to give a very practical example that I had encountered. In 2011, I think, when India won the World Cup in Wankhede Stadium in Bombay, it was a day-night match, if you recall. After the match was over, the next day, the municipality reported that people had actually come, people were in a celebration mood at night. So basically, there were beer bottles and Indian flags thrown all around Wankhede, all the area surrounding South Bombay. So basically, when people wanted to be united, that means they had this feeling that our country won the cup. So perhaps, okay, so there is some attachment to the country, there is a good feeling for the country. That part is good. That part is the unity. But then even there is a principle. So for example, everybody knows that the national flag, for example, is to be respected. Everybody knows that. In fact, it's considered a crime to just tear the flag or to throw it anywhere. There are rules how you handle the national flag. Okay, that's a principle. But then sometimes in that euphoria of pleasure, of happiness, of ecstasy, that we won, we are all together now and we have conquered the world, you forget certain principles. That's one mob psychology kind of, where you just come together and you forget everything else and you do. So that's one example. Another example is also in practical situations in terms of so many things related to the caste dynamics that happen in India. So for example, people feel united in their caste. They feel, right? Like in India, you have all these different communities who have their own outfits, social outfits, where people of certain castes, they have their banners, their flags, everything. There is a unity, which in some ways is good as well, because that unity helps them, because ultimately man or woman is a social animal. So we need people, with whom we can identify with. So that part is good. But then sometimes principles are forgotten. So many times you see that if one member of some caste, let us say some Dalit or some other caste, let us say, has done some atrocity or has done something, let's say some member of the, like it happened earlier, so I'm just quoting a real example. You know, let us say when Dalit man, he has raped or done something to some particular other caste woman or something, then what happens in the name of unity, people forget all principles. That means they will just come together and harass that family, and they will harass all the people of that community and think that, you know, we also have to do that against some other girl or something, you know, who has actually, you understood? Like in rural India or even in rural Pakistan, this happens actually. In rural Pakistan, it happens more than here, where if someone has, you know, raped some woman or something, then the panchayat decides, they say that, okay, now whoever is raped, that person's father will rape the daughter of the rapist or the sister of that. Now that girl has nothing to do with this, you understood? She is just an innocent victim actually. But then they pass such laws. So, you understand what I'm saying? So sometimes in the name of unity, when people come together as a caste, as a community, as a country, you forget principles. You just do anything just because you're together and because of mob psychology. Where, you know, and in that unity, everybody just makes equations in terms of their caste and their community only. Nobody really thinks of the principles behind it. What am I doing? Is it right? Am I thinking with my brain or am I just acting blindly? Make sense? Yeah. I mean, we could think of, I mean, I'm just giving in the political and social examples, but you could think of examples even in the, within families also, where similar things happen. Any other question or comment? Anyone? Right? So we go to the second part. And the second part is interdependence in the sacred bonding. So in this part, mainly we are going to address the position of woman in society, as well as the relationship between man and woman, you know, especially in a husband-wife relationship. So that's actually the focus over here. I have taken this part specifically because generally world over it is assumed, or people make this assumption that most religions have gender bias against women, right? So this is what at least several people tend to believe, where they believe strongly that there is a lot of bias against women. And to some extent world over, it is seen also that way, that just like going back to what I spoke last time, if you compare Europe on one hand and Arab world on the other, in the Arab world, even today, if a woman has to go somewhere, or a woman is not allowed to drive, or if she has to go somewhere, then either her father, her husband or brother should be there. Otherwise it's considered illegal, and you know, they're trouble, and you know, there are so many things. So in several ways there are such systems even today in some extremely conservative parts of the world, because of which the general assumption is that there has been a gender bias against women. You agree? All of you agree with this observation in general? Yeah, people feel that. In fact, even in companies nowadays, they have this whole drive of creating gender equality. So recently I was just speaking to a TNP officer. So he was telling me that one challenge he was facing currently in the placements is, many companies who are coming to college, they are taking more girls than boys. So I asked, is there any specific reason why they are doing that? So he said, yeah, there is. He said that nowadays these American multinational companies have decided they want to have equal number of males and females in their organization. But because till now they have more males only, they are recruiting females in larger numbers. You know, so that's why he said that if they recruit 4 girls, they are recruiting a boy. You know, so they said that. So a very interesting observation. So the point really is that in several places, people believe that in the past there has been a lot of thing against women, and we need to correct that. You understood? So this whole concept of liberalization and women's liberation movement, in terms of, you know, let's come out of the shackles of the bondage that all the religions and the society has put on us, right? These are general beliefs that people entertain or look at. I want to speak briefly about that right now, okay? From the Mahabharata perspective. So what they talk on that. Okay, so we will take it one by one. Yeah. So the first point we are actually looking at over here is how, for example, the marriage itself in the Indian context, how it basically happened, at least in the higher classes. So all of you must have heard this word called Swayamvar. Must have heard this. So please remember, so Swayam means what? Oneself. And Vara basically, yeah, just close the door. And Var means what? What does Var means? What does Vara mean? Husband. Vara means husband. So Swayamvar means what? The lady chooses her own husband. Okay. There is no such word as Swayamvadhu, by the way, where the man chooses the girl. It's not there. Because the idea is that the proposal, that means the proposal or the main initiative is taken by the girl. So there is a reason why it is that way. So we are going to look at all these questions now to understand why certain things have been in a particular fashion. So hold on. So the first thing is that in India or in most countries, at least, wherever in some way religion plays a role in people's lives more strongly, marriage is understood as something between families, right? In today's world, primarily what we see is marriage is between individuals. Families are not, it is there perhaps to some extent, but it is not that important or that significant. Please go this way. Yeah. So marriage is primarily treated as between families. Can you just close the door completely? I didn't ask you to lock, I just asked you to close it. Yeah, yeah, okay, come and sit down. So yeah, so I'll just take some examples and we will discuss this point. So just like when there is the Swayamvar of Sita and so there is a particular competition where a particular bow has to be strung, etc. And when Ram does it, so the story comes in flashback. When Ram and Sita are in the forest, they meet a couple called Atri and Anusuya. So this Anusuya, this lady is asking Sita about her marriage. How did your marriage happen and everything. So Sita says that actually, she says that I had to get married first to the family and then to Ram. She says that even when Ram broke the bow, he was not immediately willing to marry. He said that he had not come from the marriage perspective itself. He had come just to see the bow. And he was interested to know how strong the bow is. So when the bow broke and my father told him that now you have this, I had kept this particular bow with the intention that whoever breaks this bow gets my daughter. Ram said that I didn't come for that. I came mainly for the bow. If it is about my marriage, you'll have to talk to my father. So Sita says that my father had to immediately call for Dasharath and then the families came and then the marriage was conducted. So this whole idea in general in Indian society was marriage was between families. So the real advantage of that system is very simple, that the whole family takes responsibility in some way for whatever happens. So whereas when it is primarily between individuals, there is no backing or there is no support system in general. So basically that's where the option lies, whether you want that support system or you don't want the support system. However, in today's world, generally people don't like any interference, because it's generally a world where people think from their perspective. So these things are generally out. Okay, so now I wish to give some more examples on this. So the second example that I wish to take is a very interesting example. What you see, this is one of the most romantic stories in the Mahabharata. This is the story of Dushyanta and Shakuntala. So please remember, this Dushyanta and Shakuntala happened to be the parents of this king called as Bharat, on whom India is called as Bharat today. Okay, so some of you may at least be aware that our country is also called as Bharat, and this Bharat comes from this king Bharat, who is one of the ancestors of the Pandavas. And this king, Bharat, was the son of this Shakuntala Dushyanta. So the story is very illustrating, story is very interesting in terms of, how the marriage happens. So the story is that this Dushyanta is a king. He is in the forest, hunting, etc. And then he's tired. He wants water. So he's searching, he comes to the hermitage of a Brahmin sage. That sage, the name of that sage is Kanva. And Kanva is not there, but only the girl is there, the daughter is there. So he's asking, can I have some water? I'm very thirsty. So this girl comes and she offers water to this king, Dushyanta. Then this Dushyanta looks at her and says that, who are you? So she says, I'm Shakuntala, the daughter of this Rishi Kanva in this ashram. So Dushyanta says, by looking at you, I don't feel that you're a daughter of a Brahmana. You must be the daughter of a Kshatriya only. He has that very strong feeling that this is not a Brahman's daughter, it's a Kshatriya daughter. So Shakuntala stops for some time and says, yes, you're right. Actually, I'm the adopted daughter of Kanva. My real parents are Kshatriya only. So then she tells whatever her lineage is. So Kanva happens to be the adopted father of this girl. So he says, yes. So my guess was right. Then at that time he proposes to her. He says that, I'm a king. This is my introduction. He says, why don't we get married right away? So she says, at least I have to ask my father. So he says that if you are really convinced about it, and I know for sure that, you also like me. So that being the case, we can get married right away. And this king knows everything about how a marriage is to be conducted. So Shakuntala thinks for some time and says, okay. And then they get married and they consume the marriage that night. And next morning, Dushyanta leaves. And before he leaves, he tells Shakuntala that when the son will be born, when he is 5-6 years old, you come back to my palace. And then he goes away. Now this Kanva comes the next day. Now when Kanva comes, just by looking at his daughter, he understands that perhaps something has happened. So then he's asking her, what happened actually? So the daughter says that, well, in this way, she's initially shy to tell, but she says that in this way this king had come. And this king proposed, I accepted. He conducted the marriage also. And he stayed over last night and most probably I'm pregnant right now. So she's in fact a little scared to say that, but she says it nevertheless. Kanva congratulates her. He says that you made a very good choice. You couldn't have got a better husband than this king. And he tells about the characteristics of this king and his lineage and everything. You understood? So it's a very interesting marriage which you see in the Mahabharata, which seems very modern. As in, the way things happen in the modern world in terms of, just somebody proposes, they just do what they want to do without really taking any external sanction from anybody. But still, please remember that the focus here is not just that, they just had sex or something. But the real point is that they made the right choice. They made the right choice. Okay, so both parties, when the Dushyanta and Shakuntala tell their families that this is what we did, their families say that you all couldn't have made a better choice. Because that was such an excellent choice that you made. Okay, I'm just saying that from that marriage came the king. And that time Shakuntala, what she was pregnant with, that is he's named as Bharat, on whom the entire country is named. And that's why, that whole story is called as Mahabharata, because it's the story of the Bharata Vamsha from King Bharat. And this Bharat is also a very interesting king. I'll be talking about it next time when I talk about leadership. What kind of king Bharat was. There were some very special characteristics in Bharat. So that's what the story basically, illustrates. Making a right choice. Where they actually, it's not just that they fell in love with each other based on their looks, but they also saw what their lineage and dynasty stands for. And they understood that we cannot make a... So the whole point is, why I was saying all this is because the concept of Swayamvar in India, it allowed a qualified girl to make her choice. And that was considered perfectly fine. So that's the empowerment a woman was given to choose her own husband. So this is a common practice in India, and you will see in several stories in the Mahabharata the same theme is repeated. Okay, just talking about one or two more stories. There is a story of this famous, again, couple called Satyavan and Savitri in India, where the Savitri, when she is of the right age, marriageable age, her father tells her that I know that you have to get married, but for some reason I have not been able to find the best boy. So I'll do one thing. He arranges a small army, to kind of go with her, and he tells her that you just go around the entire country, go to different places, and interact with different people, and find the best husband, and then come back and let me know. So this girl goes actually, and she goes with a small entourage, and she's traveling all over the country. She's a princess, so she goes around, and then she finds the Satyavan, who is a prince, and she finds that he's the best person I could get married. And he comes back and tells the father that I found, now please arrange the marriage. And that is how that Satyavan and Savitri get married. So this concept of Swayamvar, if you see, it is very strong in the Mahabharata and Ramayana. It's all over the place. Where a girl, if she's well trained and she can exactly understand what's the best for her, she's allowed to make the choice. And in fact, she's only allowed to make the choice. In fact, because the proposal always comes from her side. And there is a reason why that is that way. We will see that also very soon. Why it is that the proposal comes from the girl's side first and not from the boys. There's a reason for it. We'll come to that very soon. Now, coming back to Draupadi's Swayamvar, that's also an interesting thing. So Draupadi makes this whole thing, Draupadi and her father, that whoever shoots that fish, eye of the toy fish by looking at the reflection will marry me. Now there is one part of the story where before Arjun does it, eventually Karna comes to shoot. And Draupadi has an objection. Draupadi says that I cannot marry the son of a driver. Sorry. Karna is not eligible for this competition. Now this act of Draupadi has been seen as unfavorable by many authors and many modern writers on Mahabharata. They have felt that, how can she say that? Does any of you have any thought as to why do you think Draupadi is right in saying that? So Draupadi, what she actually says is, she says, I don't want to marry the son of a driver. So Karna is out of the competition immediately. Right? So, anybody would like to offer any reason? Why do you think Draupadi is... I mean, you can even say, why do you think Draupadi is wrong if you feel so? No objections. The mic is there. Come on. Someone with some thought process. Was it ethical for Draupadi to dismiss Karna from the competition? Or was it unethical? Yeah, pass the mic.
The whole point of having a Swayamvar is that the girl gets to choose someone from her status, her level.
Yeah.
If she chooses someone underneath her, that's not her right choice.
Yeah.
So that's why she's allowed to say no.
Very good. That's the point. The point, many people what they feel is Karna was qualified. He was actually a very qualified man. He may be. That's not the point here. The point is it's a personal choice for that girl. And moreover, even if Karna is qualified, ultimately, at least in the social context, his parents are drivers. Now for a princess to agree to go into the family, just like, I mean, in modern times also, whether you accept caste system or no caste system, it would not happen that the daughter of Ambani or Birla, marries the chauffeur's son, saying that that chauffeur's son is actually a very talented man. He may be talented, we have no objections to that. But this rich man's daughter has her right saying that I don't want to live in such a family. And that's fine. But for this, people actually vilify Draupadi a lot because she said that I don't want to marry this person. Because it was her choice. Yeah, choice. Makes sense. Great. So this is whole thing about Swayamvar. You understood? So the first thing I wanted to say is, as far as position of woman, it is only in the Indian epics that you will see that women have this right, this privilege of making their choice. In the Swayamvar system, where they choose their husband. Okay, and that right, if you see, it's a major right as such, if you see, which is conferred on women folk in general, where they choose the husband. And why it is like that, I'll come to that reason very soon. Okay, so now we move next. The next part, again, we're continuing the same theme. Actually, this whole discussion, whatever I'm talking right now, it primarily comes in a discussion between Bhishma and Yudhishthir before Bhishma dies. So in the Mahabharata story, Bhishma is lying on the bed of arrows, and before he dies, Yudhishthir comes and meets him up. And they are talking a lot about politics, about society, about everything. In fact, half of the Mahabharata is the conversation between Yudhishthir and Bhishma. When the Mahabharata is 1 lakh verses, out of that approximately 30,000 verses or 40,000 is a conversation between them on all topics of society. So there they are discussing several things. I'll just take something. So I'll just start with something interesting. Why, for example, dowry? Okay, so the dowry system, if you see in India or perhaps in many Southeast Asian countries, has been a system that has been looked upon by several people across the world as a way to abuse and to trouble, etc. And certainly it has been so, where there are several stories that we have read in media where, you know, the groom's family, they torture the girl and they burn her alive. I mean, we hear these things time and again, that they push the girl to suicide for dowry, etc. Okay, leaving all that aside, that is obviously wrong, there's no question. But leaving all that aside, what was the philosophy or the explanation behind why dowry should be there in the first place? What mandated dowry system? So this is actually discussed between Bhishma and Yudhishthir for almost 2 chapters. So I wish to know from you, anyone, any thought as to why do you think, I don't want you to tell me, I know that there will be several reasons to say why dowry is unethical because of whatever consequences we have seen in the Indian society as a result of that. But I wish to ask you a question, why do you think it actually makes sense in some way? What do you think is the logic behind dowry? Yeah, anybody with a raise of hand? Okay. Yeah, wherever the mic is. No, third level.
Yeah. After the girl marries, she's financially dependent on that family for her entire life. So
okay, to make her independent, huh?
No. In some way, the parents take responsibility of her financially for the rest of that girl's life as well.
So she's saying that so that the girl is financially independent, the parents provide her money. But in some way, I mean, it's a good thought, but I'm just trying to think aloud. In some way, this seems, you know, self-defeating in a sense that when you enter a relationship thinking that I will have this space, you're this space, that's perhaps the beginning of, you know, all kinds of collisions and disaster in some way. Good thought though.
I mean, what I mean to say is that the girl is now the wife. She is a connection between both the families. She's the daughter of the parents as well as the wife of her husband. So both the parties should contribute in financially.
Aja, to ensure that she's financially well off. You have an answer? Yeah, great. Yeah. So when don't off that, yeah.
So when one princess marries a prince.
No, it's not about princess. Dowry is there for everyone.
Okay, so I was thinking.
No, dowry hare ke liye. Why dowry I'm asking? Yeah, tell.
I was thinking
you were thinking from the king's perspective.
Yeah, the kingdom will be given to the prince so that.
No. First of all, in the Indian system, the kingdom is not a personal property of the king. I had told this also last time. In the Indian ethics, the kingdom is not your personal property to divide between your children. So that's not the reason. Okay, here.
Maybe it is introduced because a girl has the right to choose who can be her future husband, and
no, she has that right. Yeah, but then why take dowry?
Yeah, so if the girl chooses to marry a person who is who doesn't earn as much as she was living before, so
okay.
Maybe by
if you marry a poor man, you get dowry, huh? Yeah, something like that. Maybe, but it doesn't seem that way because dowry was there everywhere. Okay.
I'm just guessing, but
yeah, guess, no problem.
I think dowry might have originated not as the groom's family demanding something, but because the girl's family wanted to give her something. Because
but why? Why should they give?
I mean, as in she's now going to move into another house,
so?
and she has a right over. She has a right over there, or whatever they own, right? And they care for her.
Yeah, I got the answer finally. The last part. The dowry system is there just for this reason that the parents' property has to be equally inherited among all the children, boys and girls together. Because of that, when the girl gets married and goes to another family, at least in the Mahabharata times or even in traditional India, the girl goes to another village or goes to another city, town, somewhere else far away. Right? So she takes her share of inheritance. That's as simple as that. It is just an inheritance law. That's all. That's the only thing about it. So that's why the dowry had to be as per status. So according to that couple who's getting their daughter married, if they have 2 sons and 2 daughters, and if they have X amount of property, X by 4 is the dowry. Because that share is the girl's share. And because she's got married and she has gone to a faraway place, you know, which in that sense when in family, it went with her. As simple as that. It is actually a very modern idea, because in modern India, for example, the inheritance laws in India are not purely, you know, it's not that the property goes only to the male, it goes to all the children. Yeah.
लड़की के mom and dad तो जिंदा रहेंगे.
One second, slowly.
लड़की के mother and father तो जिंदा रहेंगे ना.
One second.
लड़की के माता और पिता जिंदा रहेंगे, तो अगर उन्होंने अपने प्रॉपर्टी का कुछ हिस्सा दे दिया लड़की को, तो फिर उनके पास कम बचेगा ना. तो उनके उपजीविका के लिए क्या कोई साधन कम हो जाएंगे उनका.
No, one sec. Hold on. We take his question. See, first of all, it is not that, I understood your question. You are saying that they lose, his question basically is that if I have X amount of property, I have a boy and a girl, and my daughter gets married, I give that property, I am at loss, right? As a father, I have lost my property. That's what he's saying, you know. See, that's what, I understood your point. Yeah, listen. See, that's what I'm making the point over here. The point which I'm trying to make here is, it's an inheritance system. And that inheritance system had to be that way. Now again, if you see from the ancient society in India, the girl who gets married, she goes away, right? To a faraway place. And in those days, communication or people don't really travel so much and keep meeting, etc. They would go to another village, another town, wherever the girl is married. So she takes that property, and there are some ethics in dowry, which Bhishma and Yudhishthir talk. The first thing he says is that this dowry wealth, it is technically in Sanskrit called as Stridhan. That means the property owned by the woman. On that property, it is said, the husband or that husband's family cannot touch that. That's the first thing Yudhishthir and Bhishma talk about it. They say that property is completely the property of the woman, and she uses it for whatever she feels, and at the end of the day, when she's dead and gone, that property goes to all her children. That's it. So basically, it's a system of inheritance, remember. Dowry. That's the only purpose of it. Now, it has been abused, I agree. Any good system can be abused. I mean, today now the 500 and 1000 rupee notes are banned. So there is a lot of abuse going on, right? I mean, there are people with a lot of black money who are saying that 500 ka 300, you know, I give 500, take 300 back, all that. In fact, today, just before coming to class, I saw the news. It said that the government has decided that in the banks, when people come to exchange money, they will put that ink. You know, that vote during election, they put an ink on your finger. Yeah, so apparently they tried, just news at 12 o'clock, they decided they'll put the ink. Because if you go to exchange money, just to see how often you're coming to exchange money, they'll ink all your fingers. Ultimately, if I have inked 10 times, basically 10 times if I am going to withdraw very basic, then why am I not depositing it in the bank? So they've just made this decision at 12 o'clock. What I'm just trying to say is, even a good system can be abused. But that doesn't mean that the system is wrong. It's like technically what they say, throw the baby along with the bath water. You know, throw the baby along with bath water, as in, you know, when you feel that you want to throw something out, sometimes the good parts of that system also go out. So this was the system, that's it. Now again, one second, I'll just complete this point. Now you have to a little bit go into some details as well. In India, please remember, till the British came, the British changed several systems in India. This is again one system that they changed. When the British were there in India, the system that they introduced is that all the property has to be in the name of people. Right? I mean, this whole thing of documenting, you know, land. Of course, this was there before also, but they made their own way. And there what they did is, they made that the male only gets the his name on all the property. So that was one of the first times in modern India where the land or something that a girl had got in her marriage also went in her husband's name legally, because that was a British system. Because in the European system, not today, in the 18th century, women didn't own property, only man owned. That system they put over here and changed things. If you look at it very clearly, how that things happened. Okay, so this whole concept is of inheritance. All I'm trying to say is that dowry is main Indian system. Now I understood your point, that if I have daughters and my daughters get married, basically the share of property goes. But that's considered in any society where, I'll take your question, 1 second. In any society where parents primarily keep their money for their children, this is considered fine. Where my property goes to children, because there is an understanding of parents that, I mean, that's also the current Indian understanding in several ways, where, you know, people earn money for their children, as in, okay. Of course, in the modern world, it's not, it is, at least in the European world, it is not so well appreciated or understood that way, because the modern European understanding is that you just spend all your money and you're, like I think I mentioned this in the class earlier sometime, that in America, in Europe, you know, when a boy or a girl is 18, he or she is alone actually, and they have to find their own way. Okay, so I think I mentioned this, right, about, yeah, so they have various websites, for example, called Sugar Daddy, where there are sites which promise, where some rich men promise funding to young girls with some strings attached. Okay, so in this kind of society, we are unable to understand why property should go. Yeah, okay, any other question?
Does that mean do you support dowry?
No, see, 1 second. Try to understand the principle behind it. I want to ask you a question. 1 second. Is the Indian government currently saying that inheritance goes to the girl? Of course they are saying. They are. No, 1 second. They are saying it goes to the girl as well, right? Does the inheritance of a parent goes only to the boy? That's not the current Indian system. It goes to the girl as well, right? That is the system. So the system is a system of inheritance. Try to understand it. But it is just that inheritance is at the time of wedding. Because the concept is the family is a different family and the girl has gone to a faraway place. And she may just not... See, again, you have to understand the society in which it was there. See, in today's system, I will tell you, in fact, I will put it like this. In today's system, if some boy is demanding dowry and also expecting that the girl inherits the property of the father, then that's, I think, violence on the son of that parent. You understood? That means if a couple has a boy and a girl, okay, and by law, anyway, your property is already divided among the two. Now at the time of marriage, the girl's marriage, they have to send another big booty as well. Then what's left for that boy? There's nothing. I mean, during dowry also things went. And later also things will go to the girl. So what does he get? He gets nothing then. You understood? Everything is exhausted basically. So you have to see why it makes sense before understanding what that system is. Yeah. And what were the strings attached? The strings attached are very clear. I mean, Bhishma and Yudhishthira are extremely vocal about it in their discussion. That if the man or the boy's parents touch the Stridhan, what are the effects awaiting them? Why they should not do that? So when you understand that system as a whole, then it makes sense. But when you don't understand the system as a whole and you make your own system, then that's a different thing. So, you know, you understood the point? Yeah. Yeah, so the question as to, you know, whether someone supports dowry in the current Indian understanding in terms of what current Indians have understood dowry as and what they do because of that, that's extremely controversial. Yeah, you have a question.
What he said, I just don't want to argue, but I have a point. Instead of, I won't use dowry, but inheritance. As girl is taking her share, even the father, like boy's father, her daughter, his daughter-in-law will bring her share. So there is no loss of father identity.
No, 1 second. So no, there is one problem in this logic. The problem in this logic, it becomes a business model. The business model is like in North India or in many places in India, where people see the boy as, you know, bringing in that money and the girl as taking money. That whole view is extremely controversial. Because with that view, what happens is you have this whole idea of, you know, only wanting boys and killing the girls in the womb itself. You know, so there are many repercussions of what you're saying. And fundamentally that is wrong, because even though the boy, when he gets married, his wife will bring the share of dowry, that doesn't belong to this fellow's parents anyway. that belongs to the daughter-in-law only. Are you understanding? So it's not that he gets it from that perspective. It's never seen that way. And wealth is something that's increasing always. Yeah. Any other question on this? Has this been understood? Okay, there's a question. At least finally some questions started coming, because I took perhaps a very controversial topic of dowry. Till then people almost fell asleep in my philosophy and ethics course, wondering when will the lecture stop. Yeah.
I would say there are many rules and regulations that we don't follow. Many times we ban those. But if we say that this particular thing is correct on that part in previous times, so why don't we try and make them good? As in, there are several rules. Like if someone don't follow all those rules, we try to make them good.
Yeah.
So if this particular thing was considered to be good at that time, why don't we try to like make it good in that particular sense, that the money is to be kept, the property is to be kept with the girl, and
perfect. Yeah, that's what it has to be done. But the question is, who will do it? It cannot be legally imposed. That's why, if you remember, in my first talk on ethics, I said ethics and legality are two different things. Can governments make this mandatory? No, they cannot. See, this is a social issue. It's not a place where government comes in. When you say that something has to be done, it has to be done by whom? By society, not by government. When government comes, then it's very difficult for them to say. Can government say that dowry is mandatory now on? My God, whichever government says, they will lose all elections permanently. They cannot do that, because there is an understanding of why it was like that. If that understanding is there, then you understand. So it has to be understood by society. Samaj. Right? Makes sense? Okay. We'll take the next point. We have some more things to do before we... I'll just take this part later. I'll come to my third point first. Hold on. So, I mean, I'm taking one of the last points of the seminar. Yeah, 1 second. One of the last parts of the seminar, just 2 more points are there. I'll just cover them up first. And then I'll give some time for questions as well over here. One point that people have argued endlessly since a very long time is, are men and women equal? This question itself can be highly controversial and maybe I call sexist, as in people may wonder, how can you even ask such a question? Of course they are, that kind of a thing. It's implied that they are equal. What do you mean that they are unequal? Okay, so before I go into what Bhishma and Yudhishthir speak on this subject, I wish to go to, this very famous book, which in some way talks several things which are in line with what Bhishma and Yudhishthir are talking. How many of you have come across this book called Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus by John Gray? Anyone? At least I've heard this title. Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. You have heard the title, or you have read the book? You have heard the title. How many of you have heard the title? Okay, how many of you have read it? Okay, I'm not... Okay. Fine. I'll just summarize some essence from the book, as well as simultaneously what they both are talking on the subject in the Mahabharata. Okay, first the conclusion. They are not equal. Okay. Now when you say they are not equal, our immediate understanding is the understanding of mathematics. In mathematics, either something can be equal to, or greater than, or less than. But here it is not like that also. They are not equal, they are just different. That's the idea. Okay, they are as different as apples and oranges. If you ask, I have an apple in one hand and an orange in the other, are they equal? Well, they are two different fruits. How can I say they're equal? Okay, how could I say one is better than the other? It just depends. If you want vitamin C, perhaps orange is good. If you want some other vitamin which apple gives, apple is good. Depends on what you're looking for. They're different. Okay, so what's the difference? Okay, so this book also puts this point very nicely. The point is the clash of rationality versus emotionality. Okay, that means in general, woman. So here, when we are talking about equality and difference, we are not talking from certain externals. That means externals. Obviously, both are human beings. So basically, they have the same set of I mean, like they can do the same kind of job, like like in the U.S. election. One whole thing behind Hillary Clinton was they wanted the first woman president to come up to show that, even a woman can occupy that seat in office, but somehow it did not happen with Hillary Clinton. Trump won. Yeah. So, right? Yeah. The point really here is that women as a class tend to be more emotionally involved than men, who most of the time are more rationally occupied. What does emotional and rational mean over here? I'll just explain in a minute. Okay. So this is spoken by John Gray. He says that when a man and woman are conversing, especially if a husband and wife are, talking, several times there is a problem because the woman shares her problems, talks about her problems to become emotionally close. But the man, because he is more rationally involved, he is thinking how this problem can be solved. So when the wife puts forth some challenges that she has been facing in the day or in office or anything to her husband, the husband tends to think that solution, the first part of the solution is this, second part is this, third part is this, fourth part is this. And this is something that the woman completely, she cannot tune to this. Because she has been speaking about her problem as a means of getting close emotionally to a person. But the man has been looking at that whole thing as a mathematical problem to be solved out. And because it has to be solved out, he just offers solutions without hearing and getting involved in that exchange of emotion of sharing. And when that happens, he says, the relationship starts facing problem because they have not understood each other. They have not understood each other as in not the individual, but they have not understood that other species itself, that other gender, as to what is their need. You understood this? So there are several surveys also that I pointed out. One I read from some American university survey that said that an average woman, if she speaks something like 20,000 words over a period of a few days, the average man speaks 7,000 words. He speaks much less. Okay, that's again, it all goes back to this whole point that women, by nature, because they are more emotionally tuned in, they're even good at striking relationships. And this is seen in many places actually in society. Like because again they're emotionally involved. If you even see in most temples, churches, mosques all over the world, women attendance is more than men attendance in general. Like in India also, if you see some bhajan mandali going on, it's mainly the women who are doing that. The men folk are not there. Yeah, they're somewhere else doing some other stuff. So the whole point is the emotionality being there. So you understood this? So this is one major difference between the gender. Now why has this to be understood? What is an application of this? I'll talk about that. I want to give some statistics as well and to discuss this point a little further, and then we will take some questions. Hold on. So for example, it has been seen world over that women are generally much better when it comes to dealing with children. Okay, so just like every child also knows that they tend to be more close to their mothers, boy or girl, because emotionally they get it's a general observation. Now it may be likely that some ex-man may be very good at that, but that may be an exception. We are talking as a gender as a whole. That's what we are trying to talk over here. So just like this is a famous picture of Shivaji being trained by his mother Jijabai. So we all know that she had a great role in making Shivaji what he was. Now if Jijabai wouldn't have been there and she wouldn't have done that job, Shivaji wouldn't be what he became eventually. Okay, so there are certain advantages of this particular domain, that particular portfolio, that particular faculty that they have of being able to emotionally connect well. And if a woman uses that in the family, family flourishes. But if she does not, then the family system does not flourish. Now I want to, I'm going on some statistics, but before I go to that, I just want to say something. If you see this whole idea of women's liberation, at least in the first world, we are talking about first world because I'm going to present some statistics from the first world, which is a consequence of this kind of ethic or belief system. So in the first world, Europe, America, North America, etc., since the 60s or since World War II, there has been this propaganda of women's equal rights, women's liberation. I would actually say that this entire propaganda of women's liberation more than being a social agenda, has been a capitalist agenda. Capitalist agenda means, for example, if you see 1950s, 60s in America, Europe, they used the best Hollywood actresses to promote women smoking cigarette. Because until that time, men were smoking. Women weren't smoking in large numbers. Because now, it is not that, women should not smoke and men can smoke. Obviously, both have the dangers of smoking. But for women, for a young woman to smoke, it's even more dangerous because she has to have a child. The man is not going to bear the child in his system. That actually affects fertility and everything. So if you see from the 50s, 60s, it was a capitalist agenda where they used the best Hollywood actresses to say that since the women are also equal, they should also do everything that the man is doing. Okay? So today, for example, you have the European, the American white woman who feels that she will do exactly everything as the man does. Okay? Now, I'm not saying that the men are allowed to do whatever they want to do. Of course, that is also questionable. But this is even more questionable because her role in family is completely compromised. Now we come to some statistics. Now what I'm showing here is fertility rate in Europe and certain challenges Europe and America is facing currently. Okay, so before I come to that, some simple statistical concept for your brain to chew on. There is something called replacement rate, okay, in society. I'll just explain in a minute. Replacement rate as in any society, Samaj, maintains its population, at least even if it doesn't increase, if the average children had by a woman is 2.1. This is from statistics. I'll tell you the reason for it. 2.1 because obviously 2 is very clearly understood, right? Because the man and woman are replaced. So if 2 people go off, because everyone dies, so the man and woman die and go off, at least 2 are there to replace them. And it's 0.1 because some will not marry, some may die before marriage. So basically in 10 women, if 9 have 2 children and the 10th lady has 3, then the average is 2.1. Then in that case, that population is considered stable population. The population neither increases nor decreases in a long term. The challenge in Europe since 1990 is falling fertility rates. Now, I'll just tell you what this is about and then explain. So this is the total fertility rate in all European countries. All the European countries have a fertility rate below 2. And most of them are between 1 and 1.5. You understood? You understood that? 1 and 1.5 is their TFR value. Spain, Italy, Portugal. So in the European society, these people have started understanding that now. If you just Google also and try to find out falling fertility rates across Europe, you'll get all the statistics, figures, everything. So now what has happened is in their society they're having problem. Where the whites are not getting replaced enough. Now why does this happen? How is it connected to what we are talking? It is connected. It is connected. Because please remember, to be a mother and to raise a child involves sacrifice. So if everybody wants to have fun in the world, who's going to do the dirty job? And why should a woman do that? So she wants to have fun. So that's it. So everyone is having fun. So when you have fun like that, your society itself is in an existential crisis. Whether you will exist or no. You understood? So these European countries, most of them, they have fertility rates in their white woman population, a figure below 1.5. So basically what has happened is because of that falling rates, the whites are becoming minority. And that's what, and now what has happened on the other hand, the conservative world, the Arab world, they have extremely high fertility rates because they're at the other end of liberalization, so to speak. They are in another extreme. So all these people migrate to Europe. That's why Europe also welcomes migrants. Please remember, why is Germany welcoming migrant population? Because their indigenous population is decreasing. So they say that please come and work here. But this is also seen as a threat. Now, if you see one reason why Donald Trump won is also because of the fear of the white man. When I say white man, I mean the white woman also included in that equation. What was the fear? The fear is that we will become minority. We want our person to do something for us. Of course, what is he going to do? You know, the problem is in their own personal lives and, you know, the fact that they need to produce more kids basically. So for example, in America, if you see today, the white population is 60%. In Britain, in several cities, the whites are in minority. And Pakistan, Bangladesh people are in bigger numbers than the whites. You understood? Because these guys have gone there and they've sat. It's not just that in the English cricket team there are 4 Pakistanis who are playing. But it is also the fact that in their country itself, in several places, their white population, why has all that happened? The liberation thing. So they have that challenge, because in the this problem is a modern problem. Huh? This problem they have noticed only in the last 20-25 years. Before 1980, this problem did not exist. Before 1960, 1950, because even these whites, they had a lot of ethics, they had a lot of affinity to their society, their culture. They had an attachment, and they knew that they have to play certain roles. Correct? So the woman knew that she has to sacrifice. Because if you honestly see that way, a woman's role in a family is always much higher than the man's role. I mean, everybody knows in their house that if the man goes away for some time, everything goes on. But if the women folk walk off, I mean, nothing goes on. In fact, in India, in Maharashtra, there was a survey recently. It said that in the old age homes in Maharashtra, men population is significantly higher than women. The reason for that, sociologists say, is because when in an old couple, suppose if the woman dies, the old man cannot adjust to his son, daughter-in-law and everyone. He is unable to emotionally connect to them. So his destination is old age home. But when the old man dies and the woman is there, even though saas bahu fight and all happen, but still somehow that old woman finds a place in that family. She is able to find a role over there and contribute. So it has been seen actually that significantly higher number of widowers exist in old age homes in Maharashtra than widows. It's a simple fact, emotional connectivity. You understood? So now I'll tell you now, so these questions, so these are actually pertinent questions. This is where your ethics and your understanding comes in society, and there are social issues to deal with. Okay, so now there is something else that Bhishma and Yudhishthir speak of. With that I'll conclude and then take some question. Bhishma and Yudhishthir also, just hold on. Bhishma and Yudhishthir also speak about this fact that in a man-woman relationship, because a woman tends to be more emotional in nature, even when she has a physical relationship with a man, she gets emotionally connected as well. I mean, this whole question comes because why, for example, for a woman, chastity is recommended. The reason is that by definition, she cannot get into a physical relationship without being emotionally connected. And that being the case, she cannot simply change her emotional connectivity that easily. You know, whereas for a man, it is said it is not like that by definition. He gets into a physical relationship without an emotion involved in it. And because of that, even when the physical relationship breaks, and in fact this is also seen socially, that when a physical relationship, let's say a boy and a girl, you know, they are having an affair and it breaks off, it is generally seen that the girl suffers more in that relationship. Because she has not just been physically connected, she has also been emotionally tuned in. Whereas this guy has primarily been physically only connected. He was never emotionally tuned in. So for him to break that, whatever little emotion he had, is extremely easy. Now why all this talk comes is because in the context of Draupadi's marriage. Because Draupadi, when she gets married to all 5, the Pandavas, that is considered a very rare thing in history, where a woman is able to manage that. You know, and that quality is also spoken of. How Draupadi manages to have a physical and an emotional connectivity with 5 brothers. But that's not considered a general norm. Where a normal woman would find it extremely difficult to connect physically and emotionally to multiple men in this particular fashion. So they discuss all these issues, but obviously I'm not going into the details of too much because I wish to stop at this point. Just one note on marriages in general, that like in the world over it is seen, this is not again Indian statistics, but again, if you go to the first world, etc., you will see that, you know, most people, almost 97% it is said, of the first world youngsters, you know, in their teenage itself, they have physical affairs. So the question is, obviously, if that is the need, then why not get married itself? So that's the same logic that Bhishma and Yudhishthira talk of. If you have anyway a requirement at a particular age to engage in a physical relationship, why not legalize that? Why simply continue illegally and then suffer the trauma of the emotional breakdown later? Okay. With that, I will stop this discussion over here. And maybe there's just a quote of Chanakya which is like, which you can read for yourself. Okay. It just talks about who is you know, I mean, which kind of people are actually fit for us to have good relationships with. So with that, we stop. Any question or comment on the last part? Where's the mic? Wherever it goes. Any question? Yes. 1 second. Where is the mic here? Yeah, please send it again. Yeah, send it to her. Yeah.
So I have a question on Swayamvar.
Yeah.
If it was such a strong concept in India, then how did arranged marriage come?
Oh, good. The thing is, the arranged marriage thing comes up. So there are 8 types of marriage that Bhishma and Yudhishthira speak of. The Indian ethics, the epics, they speak of 8 types of marriages. Obviously, not everybody would, you know, do something. Every girl may want to do that. Swayamvar is a facility that is available to a woman. It's an option that she can exercise, where when she is well trained and qualified, and she has the right knowledge and understanding, she finds. Now again, I'll come back to this point. Why Swayamvar and why not Swayamvadu? I'll come to that. I told that I will speak on that later. Good, thanks for asking the question. The point is that because a woman is more emotional, for her, that means her choice is given the first priority. For the man, generally, the most important thing, you know, is looks. That's what he's looking for, basically. If the woman looks good and he's happy with that, you know, he's not looking so much at that emotional connectivity. That is general male psychology. You know, he just falls for the eyes. You know, whatever he sees, he's flat on that, you know. So that being the case, for the woman's priority is considered first because she has to feel emotional connectivity with that person. When she feels confident, this family, this boy, you know, is actually suited in my environment and background. Again, it is not a blind choice. It is a choice that she makes when she's well trained. So she has to make the choice. Because the man's choice is not considered important because from his perspective, he's looking at, you know, just the physical attractiveness and so many other external things. He's not immediately bothered about that emotional connectivity. But for the woman, that's more important. So that's why it was Swayamvar. But if a woman did not choose to do that, she said that, okay, she is not, then the parents do that whole thing. So arranged marriage is also there. It's one of the, you know, different types of marriages that they speak of. But this was considered a marriage typically done in high classes of society. That's how it is. Yeah, another question. One second, mic aayega. Because you're getting, okay, I'll just move the camera to you as well. Everybody will see you.
Sir, what was the ideal age of marriage in past time?
Yeah, very good. They talk about that. The age of marriage is considered around the age of puberty. Which can be, for example, so why it is like that? Again, please remember, in many of these cases, these people have got married, like for example, when